5 years ago, I googled the phrase addicted to daydreaming, trying to find answers for a problem that I'd had most of my life. I spent a lot of time reading through a lot of comments, a lot of threads, watching a lot of videos. I realised that I had what was called maladaptive daydreaming. This is a term that was coined in 2002, so actually the term didn't really exist even when I started doing this in the 90s. But that is the phrase that describes best what it was that I'd been doing. What I wanted to do is make a short video series that provides all the answers to the questions that I had when I first started looking into this problem, in the hopes it kind of saves people some time if you're in my situation and you're just starting to Google addicted to daydreaming, or there might be things in here that people who've been maladaptive daydreaming for a long time or know that phrase, they might find useful. So the 3 things I'm going to cover as part of this series is video 1, I'm going to just go over 5 key signs that you are maladaptive daydreaming. That's the best place to start, really. If you're concerned about your daydreaming and you're not quite sure if it fits into maladaptive daydreaming, I'm going to talk about 5 signs that I think are most shared by maladaptive daydreamers based on my experience and based on reading a lot of other people's experiences. Video 2, I'm going to talk about how to get help when you're embarrassed, and this will be focused on 5 tips for reframing maladaptive daydreaming in your mind. I think the embarrassment is really the biggest hurdle that people face when they want to reach out for help and they can't. That's certainly something I've struggled with a lot. It is a very embarrassing problem because 1, it's not talked about, and 2, daydreaming is such a common thing for people that it sounds like a silly problem, or it sounds like something that I guess people couldn't imagine actually being a problem. So I want to kind of go over and give some tips on how to get over that. And video 3 is how do you actually stop maladaptive daydreaming? Does therapy help? Does medication help? Do you have to do it through willpower? I've tried all 3 of these things, and I was going to just make a video talking about my experiences with these and what I think will help. So this is video 1, 5 key signs that you're maladaptive daydreaming. Number 1, you have created scenarios that you replay over and over. So if you think about normal daydreaming, what you do when you're daydreaming normally, and what I suppose the vast majority of people do generally, is you might think about an event coming up, or something kind of closely linked to your life, and you'll kind of imagine yourself in a scenario, and you might like replay conversations that you've had, or you might imagine having a conversation with your manager or your partner or whatever, but it tends to be daydreaming that's quite closely linked to your life, and you will daydream like more about random things at different times, and they'll kind of come to you as seems like in a more natural way. If you are maladaptive daydreaming, you are likely to have scenarios that you will replay over and over again, and that you will go to, and you will stay in those worlds and come back to those worlds. And a lot of people have their own invented worlds with invented characters, and other people maybe maladaptive daydreaming about people in their life, or celebrities, or people they've made up. But what makes it different is that you are likely to have scenes that you replay over and over, or the daydreaming is more of a default state that you want to get back into, or that your mind just needs to take you there. And in that sense, it interferes with your daily life. Like the whole concept of it being maladaptive daydreaming is that it does impact your daily life in a negative way. So even though, daydreaming can be enjoyable, like if you spend too long doing it, then that's when it becomes maladaptive, really. And if you have the same kind of scenes or same scenarios that you go back to over and over again, that can really start to feel unpleasant, really. It's kind of like maybe the sensation of getting a song stuck in your head. It kind of starts to drive you crazy. That's maybe what I would compare it to. Number 2 is the urge for physical movement. So a lot of maladaptive daydreamers, they will pace when they daydream, or they will move in certain ways, they will make gestures. There's this feeling that you want to get the stories out of your body and you want to inhabit the character that you're daydreaming about or the world that you're in, and it's almost like too much for your brain to contain, that it wants to break out of your body. I think that's the way I would describe it. Like, I had to really like pace up and down and jump around and do certain things, and I think that's quite common. When we try to control this, then it can become it can make us feel kind of nauseous. I think that's how I would describe it. Like, when you can't do these things, there's a discomfort in the body. So I think the natural state is to want to move or to want to do something with your body, but obviously because a lot of times we can't, then we're restrained, and that causes, physical discomfort. For me, I kind of stopped pacing a long time ago just because, I was so scared of getting caught, because I thought, this looks insane. So I tried to keep everything into my head, apart from like certain times where I know I kind of gestured or spoke to myself. But I think the natural compulsion is to move. So I think that's where I would separate normal daydreaming from maladaptive daydreaming as well. The third thing is that you are triggered by music or media. This is very, very common. Like, for me, it was music when I was younger that kind of triggered me, and I would have to play music in my room and then pace, and that's a very, very common shared experience among maladaptive daydreamers. And this is one of the big issues about, how we incorporate music into our life when we know it will set us off. And I've really struggled with that. I know a lot of people struggle with that. So that is, quite a key sign of maladaptive daydreaming. If music kind of sets you off and you kind of struggle to listen to music really without going off into your daydream world. And the same with media. We're quite susceptible to, a new film setting us off and giving us storylines, and maybe wanting to incorporate characters or stories that we see into our daydreams. And, we might be triggered by a movie, and then that will become our world for like 2 years. So really susceptible to, I guess, like becoming obsessed with media and being triggered by music. Number 4 is you generally prefer daydreams to real life, or at least like you feel more at ease in your daydreams. Obviously, it makes sense if you are creating a scenario in your head, it's going to be more pleasant than how the scenario would play in real life. But the thing with maladaptive daydreaming is that you kind of want it to be your default situation or your default life almost. It's kind of like everything else is really an interruption to your daydreams. You would rather stay in and daydream as opposed to interact in the real world. And a lot of times this is why it's quite hard to, build relationships or do certain things that you want to do, because you actually just want to be in your head, and being in your head is a safer place to be, and for a lot of time it's a more enjoyable place to be. And in that way is where it really interferes with your life, because you feel that all you want is to stay in that world, and that really becomes where your brain is most at ease. You don't want to go through like the little moments of life, or you kind of struggle to deal with any kind of discomfort in life, and the solution to that is going back in your head and daydreaming and kind of living life through another person's life, really, or through a life that you've made up. So, if you prefer your daydreams to yourself and to your life and your life situation, then you're not going to put in the effort into your life. I've had times where, I just literally was a body carrying around stories. That's kind of how I felt. I didn't feel engaged in my own life. I didn't feel engaged in any kind of present moment, like unless, you know, I was with family or friends and I was being like kind of suitably distracted. But in general, I just felt, you know, 90% of the time I was not engaged in my own life. And then it's kind of a vicious cycle where if you are daydreaming so much that you're not engaged in your own life, then you don't do anything to help your own life, and then your own life kind of gets worse and you'll retreat, and then the daydreams get worse and worse. So yeah, that is where I think, you know, maladaptive daydreaming can get particularly dangerous. And I think that probably that's the point that where people, you know, really start to investigate and start to, you know, wonder what's wrong with them, because they can see that they're not achieving things in life, or, you know, they're not living life in the way other people seem to be living life. And I think that's the point where people, you know, reach out. And, you know, you reach a breaking point with this. That's a really common thing. If you look through the Reddit threads, everybody's like, oh my goodness, I've just found this out, that this is what I do. There's so many people just like coming to the realization of what they've been doing. So it's a really interesting phenomenon. And number 5, and this kind of continues on, it's like, it feels like an addiction you can't stop. You almost don't have control of it. And I think, you know, I'll speak about this in other videos, but like once you start to seek help, then, you know, you're going to find out more about, you know, what is actually causing the maladaptive daydreaming, because maladaptive daydreaming by itself is not considered a mental illness. It's considered a symptom of other mental illnesses. So you will, hopefully through getting help, and hopefully my other videos will encourage you to get help, you will find out actually what's, you know, what is maladaptive daydreaming a symptom of for you. You know, it can be linked to OCD, ADHD, depression, lots of other mental illnesses, even though it's not considered one by itself. But that will explain, hopefully, you know, what you're using maladaptive daydreaming for, or why maladaptive daydreaming is happening in your brain. Because, you know, it will get to a point where you realise, oh, this is an addiction that I can't stop. You maybe think that you're enjoying it and think that it's something you're choosing to do. But if you do try to stop, I think that's when you might realise that you can't stop. I've been through that quite a lot. I've tried to stop and realised that I couldn't stop. And that's when you understand it's a problem. And paying attention to what's happening in your body when you try to stop is really interesting, because, you know, I felt such a discomfort in my body, and I had to daydream just to like appease my body and to make me feel right in my body. Like you almost just have to give into it in order to feel normal and like you want to feel. So these are the 5 main things that I would consider links the majority of people who are maladaptive daydreaming. If I've forgot something, you know, really important that you think comes up for a lot of people, then please do leave a comment and let me know. If you have other symptoms, or if yours presents in different ways, then let me know. I think that's really interesting. So yeah, like I said, this is a 3-part series really aimed to help people who are just discovering that they're maladaptive daydreaming and are looking for help, or if you've known that you're maladaptive daydream for a while but you're struggling to get help. My next video is going to talk about, you know, how to overcome the embarrassment of talking about this, and I'm going to give you 5 ways I think you could help to reframe maladaptive daydreaming in your mind so that you find it easier to speak about, because it's something I struggled with for a long time. You know, it is really, really difficult to reach out and to get help when, you know, you're just feeling ashamed or embarrassed. So I hope this video has helped you to recognise if you are maladaptive daydreaming, and I hope that you will like and subscribe so that you can catch the next video coming up. I'm going to put these out over the next week. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!